Tim?
Welcome everybody to another edition of UFO Man Live. I am UFO Man, and to my side is my guest, Tommy Highway. Tommy, introduce yourself.
Hello, folks. My name is Tommy Highway. I'm a network engineer, an author, a ufologist. Really happy to be here, Tim. Thank you, as always, for having me. Folks, we have a great show planned for you this evening. We're going to talk about something that's a somewhat controversial subject in most circles, and that is the fact that there have been cases and actually confirmed cases of structures being actually found on the backside of the lunar surface. That's right, folks. We're talking about structures, actual things that have been built on the backside of our planet's moon. Okay, it's going to be a very interesting show. We're going to have a great time tonight, and I'm just happy to be here. Thank you.
Right, not necessarily just on the backside. Originally, it was discovered on the backside, but after that, several orbital passes around the moon indicated that there were structures, ruins, and anomalies all over the surface. And we're going to discuss that, and we're going to show images that were actually shot by the Lunar Orbiter. Okay, in 1965, NASA sent a mission to the moon to make several orbital passes as to film the terrain and transmit data back to Earth to help NASA in determining where the astronauts would land in 1969 in Apollo 11. The data had to be transmitted from the lunar orbiter to the satellite dishes on Earth, and then the data was transferred to the Kennedy Space Center labs, where the data was converted into MOSAIC image strips that, when put all together like a puzzle, would represent the entire lunar surface. Sergeant Carl Wolf, actually the late Sergeant Carl Wolf, United States Air Force retired, was one of the photographic technicians responsible for the processing of those images and the equipment used. He had crypto security clearance, which is incredibly difficult to get, by the way. Here is his testimony on what NASA found in 1965 and the cover-up that began. Okay, here we go.
It was 1965. I believe it was about June or July of 1965, sometime in that time frame. My boss came to me. I was working in a color lab at that time. I was a technician, photographic technician, with a background in electronics. I'd been trained in electronic photographic repair in Colorado at Lowry Air Force Base. Actually, the school was a year long. The organization that I was in was a brand new installation. It was put in place to facilitate the escalation of the Vietnam War. So we were in a new facility. I had come there in January of 1965 to start that facility up. We installed all the equipment. There were everything from printing presses. We were doing map making as well. We were also, one of the things we were involved in was doing automatic terrain sensing. We had simulators that did terrain. You put a huge map in the facility, in the simulator, a terrain map, and you flew a camera over that and did a recording of the terrain, and then they installed that film in a plane, and the plane could then fly in under radar. It was called ATRAN, and no one knew we had that capability at the time as well. So we were installing all of that equipment. At any rate, I was in a color lab one day when my boss, Staff Sergeant Taylor, came over to me and said that they were having a problem with some equipment on the base, and it was the first Lunar Orbiter program, where they had a mission to pretty much locate the first landing sites for the 1969 lunar mission for the astronauts. So at any rate, he said they were having some problem with equipment over there. It was a similar equipment that we had. It was computerized contact printing equipment. And he wanted to know if I would go over and take a look at it. And he said to me, it's an NSA facility. And at the time, I didn't know what NSA was. I was pretty naive. And I thought he said NASA. So in my mind, for a long time, I thought it was a NASA facility that I'd gone to. But I remembered him saying NSA and converting it in my own mind to NASA.
And for viewers, the NSA is? It's
the National Security Agency. And I didn't know much about the National Security Agency until probably 10 or 15 years ago. Now, the interesting thing, when my boss came to me at that point in time, I only had a top secret security clearance. I didn't get my crypto security clearance for a few more weeks. It takes years to get a high-level security clearance like that, and they start that when you're in school. And only the honor graduates from these schools are the people who get the high-level security clearances. They also get to choose their duty assignment, which is really quite nice. It just was a fluke. I just happened to be well prepared for what I was doing when I went to school.
And how did you get to be in a position where you actually were to deal with the material we are about to discuss?
I was asked to go over to this facility on Langley Air Force Base where the NSA was bringing in the information from the Lunar Orbiter. And so I packed up some tools. I went over. I went into the facility. As I approached the facility, it was very lightly guarded. I mean, the base was under high security at any rate. I was surprised that there wasn't a higher level of security outside the facility as I look back on it later. I went into the facility. I gave them my low-level security badge. They gave me a higher-level security badge. A couple of officers took me into this hangar. It was a very large hangar. As I walked in, there were people from other countries, a lot of foreign people from other countries in civilian clothes, with interpreters with them, with security badges hanging around their neck. And the first thing I thought to myself, if this is NASA, what are all these foreigners doing here? What are all these people from other countries speaking other language? Didn't make any sense to me. And I was really quite impressed with that. It just didn't grok. I was, what are all of these people doing here? And they were very quiet, very reserved, and there was a very peculiar pall hanging over them. They had a very concerned demeanor. Okay, so they took me into this laboratory. I took a look at the equipment. There was an airman second class in there. I was an airman second class as well. He turned the equipment on and put it through its paces. It didn't do what it was supposed to do. I saw what was going on with it. I said, I need to do some troubleshooting on it. It had little printed circuit boards in it with discrete components at that time. It was before we had integrated circuits. And I said to him, we'll have to take this thing out of the lab if we're going to work on it. We can't work on it in here in the darkroom environment. So he called someone to get some people to come in and move it. It was about the size of a small apartment refrigerator. It wasn't something you could easily move. So everyone left the facility, left the darkroom, except this airman second class and myself. And we're in waiting for someone to come to remove this piece of equipment. So while I'm in there, I said to him, and I'm really fascinated with this process. How did they get the images from the lunar orbiter to the laboratory here? And he went through the whole process describing how the various radio telescopes around the world were linked, and they telemetered the data into Langley Field. And at the time, I didn't know what the real purpose of this darkroom and this operation in this facility was. I thought this was where they were bringing the data in and then releasing the images to the public. I had no idea that there were other issues involved in this facility. So he starts telling me all of this information, and I knew that what we were doing was classified anyway, and that he could only share a certain level of what he was doing with me because of the compartmentalized nature of our jobs. At any rate, he told me how everything worked. He showed me the equipment where the digital information came in, where it was converted to photographic images. They were doing 35mm strips of film at that time, which were then assembled into 18.5 by 11-inch mosaics, they were called. There was a digital signature and a grayscale on every 35mm strip. And those strips were from successive passes around the moon. And they would take and build up a photograph. They would scan one section of the moon, then another and another, and then they would get a larger image. So this mosaic then would be put in that contact printer, and that was then a print that was issued to whomever, the press, the scientist, whatever, wherever that was intended to go. So he was showing me how all this worked, and we walked over to one side of the lab, and he said, by the way, we've discovered a base on the back side of the moon. And I said, whose? What do you mean, whose? He said, yes, we've discovered a base on the backside of the moon. And at that point, I became frightened, and I was a little terrified, thinking to myself that if anybody walks in the room now, I know we're in jeopardy, we're in trouble, because he shouldn't be giving me this information. I was fascinated by it, but I also knew that he was overstepping a boundary that he shouldn't be stepping over. And then he pulled out one of these mosaics and showed this base, which had geometric shapes. There were towers, there were spherical buildings. There were very tall towers and things that looked somewhat like radar dishes, but they were large structures. So I didn't say any more to him because I was concerned again that somebody was going to come in at any moment, would catch us having this conversation, and we would be in real trouble. I realized that he was telling me this information because he didn't have anybody else to talk to. Now, probably in that laboratory, he was probably one of the few enlisted people, and he was a worker bee. And he had a high-level security clearance, obviously, but he couldn't share that information with anybody else. And in those days, we didn't. When you had your security clearance, you took it seriously. It isn't like today where people don't take these things seriously. We had a different set of morals and ethics and values. That's the way we were raised, and we stayed bound by those agreements. So it was rare that someone would do something like this, but this fellow and I were the same rank. I think he was very distressed. He had the same pallor and demeanor as the scientists outside the room. They were just as concerned as he was, and he needed to discuss it with somebody. So that was the end of it right there. I didn't take it any further than that. I just filed it away. But the interesting thing, every day that I went home, I would think to myself, I can't wait to hear about this on the news, And, so I'd turn on the TV and I'd look at the news to see if they're going to announce we've discovered a base on the backside of the moon, being really naive, And of course, here it is 30 some years later, and we still haven't heard about it. But at the time, I had been given about 30 of these photographs. They weren't photographs with artifacts in them, but they were photographs from that contact printer. I had some of them autographed by Dr. Collier, who was the head of the project at that time. And when I left San Francisco a few years ago, I actually sold them all in a yard sale because I was tired of carrying them around. And I may have a couple of them filed away someplace, but it was probably one of the biggest mistakes I've ever made. What was really interesting is I'm not sure what the resolution on those photographs were, but I know that we could discern from the satellite photography we were doing at our installation, you could read the license number off a car at that point in time. So I know we had that level of technology available. Whether or not it was on that lunar orbiter, I don't know. This also always brings to question, in my mind, why we're getting such low resolution on photographs that we receive from Mars and any of these other missions. The resolution of these photographs is very low, when we've had since the early 60s a capability of much higher resolution. So I'm not sure what that's all about. That question always comes up in my mind. If I compare it to what I'm seeing now, because I do have photographs that have artifacts in them that are similar to what I saw, they're massive. Some of the structures are, half a mile in size. So they're huge structures. Yeah, I mean, and they're all different size structures in different photographs. You would have to have an above top secret security clearance, which generally would be cryptologic or above. In my case, I ultimately did have a cryptologic security clearance, and when I did have that clearance, I had access to all of the imagery from the U2s, from the satellite photography. I had access to everything we were doing. Now, the thing that was interesting about my job as an electronics technician, I got to go into every area of the facility. I got to go into the war room at SAC, Strategic Air Command, and did maintenance on equipment there. So I would see a lot of data that people generally wouldn't see with my rank. Normally you would go into your job, you do your one little task. If you were a photographic interpreter, that's all you did. You didn't discuss what you did with anyone else. If you worked on U2 imagery, you worked on U2 imagery. If you worked on satellite imagery, you worked on satellite imagery. But you didn't discuss your job with anyone else. And you only did your task. If you were a photographic processor, you only processed the images. You were not allowed to discuss what you saw in those images with anyone else. We were briefed extensively about what this compartmentalization looked like. You didn't have conversations about what you were doing. So for me, I got to go into all these different areas and see what each of these people were doing, and some of them did share what they were doing. They would have photographs of the missile emplacements above their desk that they'd discovered, or they'd have photographs of the missiles on the decks of the Russian aircraft carriers, or I'd see various fresh spoil from a satellite photography around a missile emplacement in the Sinai Peninsula, as an example. We had in one room in our organization, we had a map of the Sinai Peninsula at that time that was made up from satellite photography. It was a mosaic, and it was 60 feet high and 60 feet wide. It was massive with great detail. So, I mean, it was fascinating. And I saw vehicles, and I saw vehicles on these satellite photography that you could read the license plate on. They actually showed me that. So I know that was something that was real. At any rate, getting back to the compartmentalization, I had access to lots of different areas only because I was a technician moving from area to area. The only other person that would have had that kind of access would have been an officer with a high-level security clearance that had a need to know. Bottom line, if you didn't have a need to know, there wasn't any reason to discuss what you knew with anyone else. And even if someone asked, if they didn't have a need to know and they didn't have a security clearance, you couldn't discuss it with them. Everyone wears a security badge with a specific color, and you know that color represents a specific level of security clearance. And as you move from area to area within an organization, you get into higher and higher levels of secure area. You'll go through a gate, you go into a vault, you exchange your badge for another badge of a higher level of security. You're briefed on your job as to what your level of conversation can be with another person. I was told, don't ask, don't discuss, just go in and fix the equipment. We'd sit down with a security officer, and he would review what your activities were, what you were doing, what you were allowed to do. They didn't ask you what you'd seen. They knew what I was seeing because they knew what I had access to. I was told to be very cautious when I was off base. I was told not to drink. I was told not to get intoxicated. I was told not to do drugs. I was told to be very cautious of people striking up a friendship with me because there were people who were gathering this sort of information. There was a lot of espionage around the base, military espionage, or foreign espionage. You can cut that one out. At any rate, I was told, don't let anyone take my photograph. Be very cautious about where I traveled, when I traveled. I knew that I couldn't go any place for at least 5 years without telling the State Department where I was after I left the military. Anytime I traveled, I had to notify and get permission to travel any place I traveled at that point in time in the United States. They had to know where I was all the time. We were told that when we traveled over a foreign area, as an example, if we went to Vietnam, there was always someone there with us, with a gun, ready to annihilate us, basically, if we should fall into the hands of the enemy. They didn't want the enemy to get us. We would be killed instead. So we knew we were operating under these sort of conditions, that your life was in jeopardy all the time should you fall into the wrong hands. So we were aware of that. I was told when I left that I would be investigated on a regular basis to make sure that I wasn't involved in any peculiar activities that didn't suit the government's needs. My security clearance expired in, I believe it was either October or January of 1998. And it was about 1998 that I actually, after my security clearance expired, I discussed what I had seen with my sister because she was interested in the phenomena. I read Colonel Corso's book, The Day After Roswell. In the book, he said a lot of fantastic things. And he also said, near the end of the book, that there was a base on the backside of the moon. And when he said that, I said, aha. So I began to believe that everything he was saying was true. And he was saying a lot of really profound things about the crash in Roswell and alien technology and whatever, and how it had been mainstreamed through the Office of Foreign Technology by himself. So I knew that he was probably telling the truth. It just said to me, this guy's telling the truth, because I've had this experience and I know it's real. Yeah, it was Edgar Mitchell. He said, come forward. And I said, okay, it's time to start stepping out with this information. Because I was a little irritated, that the government had been lying about all of this for years and covering it up. And I felt it was time to get beyond that. There's a lot more weight to this than I realized, a lot more cover up than I realized. A lot more deception than I realized was going on. Well, some of the shapes, as I said, some of the buildings were very tall, thin structures. I don't know how tall they were, but they must be very tall.
Did you see profile shots of them?
I saw
angular shots with
shadows. They were angular shots with shadows. There were spherical and domed buildings, that were very large. They must be, half a mile in scale, because they were in relationship to the scale of the photograph. They stood out very clearly. They were large objects. It's interesting because I tried to relate them in my own mind to structures here on Earth, and they don't compare to anything that you see here in scale and structure. They're similar to a degree. I tried to relate them to metal structures, and I couldn't see a metal definition. They're more like a stone structure, but a fabricated stone. But some of the buildings seem to have very reflective surfaces on them. A couple of structures that I saw reminded me of cooling towers at power generating plants. They had that sort of a shape. Some of them were just very, very straight and tall with a flat top. Some of them were round. Some of them looked like a Quonset hut, with a domed kind of like a greenhouse.
And all of these buildings were clustered together centrally?
The particular shot that I saw, there were several clustered together over a landscape, a fairly large landscape. Mm-hmm. There was one building that had a dish-like shape to it, but it was very large. It looked like a radar dish, but it was a building. It could have been a radar dish. There was another building near it with a truncated top, with an angular top that was truncated. I didn't want to look at it any longer than that because I felt that my life was in jeopardy. Do you understand what I'm saying? I would love to have looked at it longer. I would have loved to have had copies. I would love to have, said more about it or discussed it more, but I knew I couldn't. And I knew that young fellow who was sharing this was really, really overstepping his bounds at that point.
Well, that was certainly interesting.
That was definitely verification of lunar structures. We've all been wondering, are the structures real? And for many decades, there have been astronomers and ufologists and amateur astronomers looking at the moon and actually seeing things and taking photographic shots and showing them all over YouTube. And yes, there are significant structures. Hold on a second here. I want to do something. Tommy, what do you think about what Carl Wolf said?
I absolutely believe this person. I think he's as credible as the day is long. I think it's one of those guys that's taken a really big risk by coming out, not only with his professional life or his personal credibility, but also his very life itself. I mean, this is pretty serious stuff. Back in during the Obama administration, we nuked something on the backside of the moon. Okay, and that's not a secret. This is it was a nuclear explosion that was specifically set off for a reason. Now, the cover story that they used was that we're trying to find water. Okay, so you're going to find water by absolutely vaporizing it and irradiating everything that's left for the next 3,000 years or so? I don't think so. I'm not going for that. There was something else there. There's something that we were very concerned about, and that's why we nuked it, in my opinion.
Yeah, there was another missile, a nuclear missile that was sent to the moon, and allegedly on its way there, ET craft intercepted it and destroyed it. It did not make it to the moon. That was the first nuke that was sent to the moon to blow up something on the backside. The second one made it, but the first one did not. Okay. After the mosaic image that showed an alien base on the backside of the moon was discovered, world leaders were brought into a hangar to view the image. Due to the disdain exhibited by those leaders, NASA made plans to cover up their findings of the base and other structures that were on the lunar surface. Prior to the launch of Apollo 11 in 1969, they commissioned a well-known movie director and had him create a segment representing an actual Apollo 11 moon landing that would be broadcast instead of the live landing. This is what millions of people witnessed on TV in 1969, myself included when I was 6, all in an attempt to keep from the public the truth. Due to some inconsistencies in the broadcast, such as the American flag waving in a vacuum and other irregularities spotted by sharp observations, the moon landing has always been questioned. But according to astronauts Edgar Mitchell, Story Musgrave, Gordon Cooper, John Conrad, and others such as Alex Collier, Stephen Greer, Stanton Friedman, etc., they have all stated that we did indeed land on the moon in '69. Let's hear from my guest, Tommy Highway, in regards to the falsified footage, the irregularities noted, and the cover-up that has lasted to this day. Tommy.
Well, there are just tons of anomalies when you're looking at the moon footage, all of the landings and everything else that went on there. I mean, at this point, you have to put things into perspective. What I mean by that is you have to look at the government at the time, what kind of government we had, who we were as a people, basically at that point. We were completely paranoid of the Soviet Union. Okay, there was a communist around every corner. Well, how history repeats itself, but that kind of thing going on. So we were very paranoid people back then, right? So anytime that the government got involved in anything, they seemed to overplay their hand in every single thing that they did. They weren't going to give the American public any information that wasn't absolutely need to know at that point because of national security. Okay. And that's the times that those folks lived. And now I'm a little bit too young for that. I'm a little bit younger than Tim, but I mean, if you look again, the political climate at the time, you know, it was what it was. Now, did we actually land on the moon and all that? I believe we did, and all of that.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, I personally do, but I'll tell you, I am absolutely convinced that the government knows that there's something going on the moon. I think that they've got, I mean, you just heard the gentleman speak, Mr. Wolf, about the photos and everything else that they've got. And, you know, he's not the only person that's actually come out with this story. The Dr. Stephen GREER project, I think it was Disclosure or whatever it was. It was one of these interviews just like this gentleman. And it came from a secretary at one of these facilities. She also spoke of her boss coming up to her and showing her a photo and saying, look at what we found on the moon. And it was some sort of a structure, you know, an actual building of some kind. And she, you know, she was very credible and all that. And she said, listen, I looked right at it. And I said, is that what I think it is to my boss? And my boss just smiled and said, I can't confirm or deny. But she said it was obviously some sort of a built structure on the moon. Now, our science is not advanced enough at this point that we can actually go out and build structures on the moon. And if we did, they darn sure wouldn't be half a mile and you know, in diameter, things like that. I mean, we might put like a small hut or something in a research facility, something like that on there, but certainly nothing that would cover, you know, miles of ground. We just don't have the resources and ability to do that at this time. So if you believe these folks, and I clearly do, we're absolutely in the midst of a government cover-up here. I mean, they know what's going on. They know there's something serious on the moon. And again, I think that they're afraid of it enough. They're concerned enough about it that they used a nuclear weapon on it. I mean, that's pretty serious. When you nuke something, I mean, come on.
Yeah. Although, how much effect does our technology have on something that may have been of alien origin? We don't know. We don't know if it had any effect on what they're trying to nuke, assuming possibly that they're trying to nuke the alien base. Because I wasn't going to go here, but I'm going to say it anyways. Supposedly we were warned off the moon. If we were warned off the moon, perhaps the only way to go back to the moon was to launch that nuke and try to take out the base so that we had access to the lunar surface again. But it seems like we are going back to the moon, that there is a program in effect through Space Force and through NASA currently where they're working on getting back to the moon. What I want to say is NASA was notorious for using a program with their mosaics and also with digital film where they would smudge out imagery that they took so that when people saw the public revealed images, you might see a smudge, but you won't see what's behind it. And I do have photos to show you in a little bit here in regards to that. Also, after smudging was made public, there was an outcry, and transparency came out when amateur astronomers started posting clips from NASA footage that they scoured looking for ruins and structures and anomalies on the lunar surface. And we have some of those images as well. In regards to the lunar surface, in 1965, they actually filmed from orbit structures on the moon. They could see it from orbit. So that's why they got kind of panicky at NASA and decided to cover it up. I mean, it was called the War of the Worlds syndrome. They were worried about the public reacting like they did during the War of the Worlds radio show. They didn't want a lot of chaos and anarchy when they found out that, hey, there was a civilization on the moon, or there was aliens on the moon. They were that close and they were watching us. possibly, you know?
Mhm.
What were they doing there, you know? So I have no idea about that. What do you think, Tommy?
Well, supposedly the moon is rich in, I think is it hydrogen-3 or helium-3? It's one of the two. But it's a very rare and heavy element that is not, we don't have very much of it on the planet because we have an atmosphere. But supposedly, because the moon has a very thin atmosphere, if any at all, it basically collects it from the sun. And this is supposed to be able to be used for a power source and things of that nature. Of course, like not by us, but I mean, in theory, it could be. And there's an awful lot of it on the moon. So maybe they're there mining that. Maybe they're there keeping an eye on their investment, mankind. Because again, we've talked about the terrarium theory before, that, we're just one big terrarium, we're an experiment. And they're just watching we're a long-term experiment. We talked about that theory. But it's hard to say. I definitely think that there's just too much mounting evidence that there's something going on in the moon, even as we speak right now, because as Tim mentioned to Tim's point earlier, there are several astronomers out there that got some real serious cameras focused on the moon, laser, all kinds of stuff. And they are clearly seeing things streak across the moon and all of this, and not like a meteor would or something like that. It doesn't impact. I mean, these are things that are flying at a parallel course. You know what I'm saying? They're obviously, well, I don't know, in my opinion, under intelligent control for whatever it's worth. Also, guys, I'm having a technical malfunction and I'm locked out of the chat right now. So I'm doing my best if I haven't responded.
Okay, that's okay. I'm highlighting the chat, so I am paying attention to everyone in the chat.
Not trying to be rude.
In regards to the moon itself, yes, there is a theory that the moon is hollow because of the fact that they crashed a probe into the moon's surface. NASA did, and it rang like a bell for hours. The only way it can ring like a bell is if it is metallic in structure and has a hollow center. So there must be something underneath all that dust. Now, they say the dust on the outside of the moon is actually from impacts from asteroids and meteors over thousands of years. So the dirt or the moon soil is actually not lunar soil. It's from somewhere else. So what it's rich with might be what these people are mining, or these beings are mining on the moon. Now, there was something called the lunar ridge that was discovered. It was a ridge that went around the periphery of the actual moon. It looked like a seam. It was raised like a mountain ridge, but it was straight. This, to me, indicates that it is some type of vehicle. Of course, it hasn't been verified yet on whether it is a vehicle or not, but there are structures on the outside of this sphere. And I'm going to show some images on that at this time. So let's see here. Now, I don't have any sound with this. These are just pictures and titles. So you can take a look at it and see the actual structures. We can take a look at it and discuss them. NASA caught airbrushing out lunar structures. Let's see here. Here we go. I think I played it, didn't I? Yeah. Here's a smudged out, what was considered a building. You can't even see it, but you can see clearly the smudge. Here are objects of interest which have been smudged out by NASA that kind of look like buildings. Here's an industrial building with a pipe on the right. You see the pipe?
Yep.
Here's a couple buildings. Here's some of those tall towers with the flat tops.
Look at the angles on those. I mean, come on. That's, that's just, they're angular. I mean, big time.
Yeah, they're angular, and on top, they're flat. Now, if they wanted to hide the tower, why did they make it flat on top to indicate that it was flat? It seemed to me like they're still giving you information.
Well, the American government, I mean, if you give them any reason at all, they'll take a glass of milk out of a photo for no reason. I mean, that's just the way they do it.
Okay, this is the one that Carl Wolf was referring to. It looks like a cooling tower on a really long building. This building goes behind this rectangular shape in front to the right. You see that? He said that was about a half-mile long with a cooling tower. That's it right there.
Looks an awful lot like a big manufacturing facility of some kind, doesn't it?
Yeah, like they're hiding an industrial plant.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here are exposed lunar structures and objects. This was supposedly a cluster of domes on the backside of the moon.
Housing.
This is the Quonset hut stone structure that Carl Wolf was referring to. It looks like fabricated stone. Here's a squared out area. I wanted to point this out. This was actually squared out in the ground, and it looks like there's buildings on the right and left.
I don't know if any of you folks believe in astral projection or whatever, but there's also a story out there of I don't remember his name, but a gentleman that's supposedly really good at it. And at some point, the government employed him to come in, and they tested him to make sure that he could do what he said he could do. Supposedly, he projected himself, and again, this is F you believe it or not, he projected himself to the moon because they wanted to see what was going on there. And the story that he tells is there was a full functioning base, and there were people, and there was some kind of a race of people there in the whole 9 yards. Something interesting you maybe should look up: astral projection to the moon.
Yeah, that and remote viewing. Remote viewing is
that's what I'm referring to, is remote viewing. Ingo Swann, is that his name?
Yeah, Ingo Swann. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, he tells a pretty interesting story. He really does.
This here looks like what might be a pipe sticking in the ground with something on top, or maybe a piece of machinery on top of the ground. Unknown. That's why I put a question mark. What do you guys think? What do you think, Tommy?
Looks like there's something there to me. Looks like there's something substantive sitting right there. I mean, it's got a shadow. It's got everything it should have.
Yep.
Something metallic looking.
Here's signs of strip mining. If you look in the back here, you can see, if you look in the back here, you can see what looks like different levels of digging and piles of soil.
Almost like a strip mine, huh?
Yeah. Okay, we're going. Okay, this is not a very clear image, but there looks like there's something in front here and something mechanical in the back. This was filmed on the backside of the moon. It looks like machinery. To me, it looks like machinery. I don't know what that would be. Yeah, it is too bad it's blurry. I think it was done on purpose so that we didn't see it clearly. Unless it was amateur astronomers trying to get the image and they just didn't have the camera to get it clear. Check that out. Can't tell me that doesn't look like a building or a bunch of buildings.
It sure does, doesn't it?
That was on the moon as well. Verified photo from NASA images. Oh, come on. Okay, here we go. This was supposed to be a base filmed on the dark side of the moon.
No way that's natural.
I have a better picture of this later on. It even kind of indicates runways. Yeah, John, for sure. Those are not rocks. I agree. Here's a possible building in a lunar crater. To me, I have to honestly say it looks like a trailer. That's what it looks like to me, like a camper, you know?
Thomas, we're not sure exactly what they blew up. They didn't get real specific about the targeting on that, but we just know that it was an event that happened, and it was just odd that they did that, I think.
So this one is really interesting because it is very large. It looks like it has windows, and it is inside a crater.
Mm-hmm. For those of you that have seen the mummy, the mummy out there of the supposedly found on the moon, is anybody aware of this, like that orange woman or whatever? What is everybody's thoughts on that?
I personally don't feel it's real.
I don't either.
I think it was, they may have found a ship, but I don't know if they found the mummy or not. I cannot verify that, so I'm not going to say either way, I guess. But I'm leaning toward that is probably not the case. But then again, we don't know, you know, what has been hidden from us. Maybe they have. Okay, this was supposed to be a raised area inside a dark spot on the moon. You can kind of see it. If you look at the yellow image, it looks like a tower on top of some other type of structure, and a little structure next to it.
Mm-hmm.
That one's not real clear. Now this one here, in my opinion, looks like two things. Looks like an observatory, because up on the upper right side, there's an opening. Like if you were to put a telescope out, it could also be some type of power plant, or it could also, well, jokingly, I would say it looks like the Death Star, but it could be a ship on the surface as well.
Could be.
But no one knows for sure, but it looks like an observatory.
I mean, look at the angles on that thing, the shadows and all that. I mean, that just looks real.
That doesn't look to me like something that would naturally occur on any surface of any planet. Of course, we don't know enough about our planets to really make that determination, but in my opinion, that doesn't look natural. Agreed, Tommy?
I absolutely agree with you. That looks like that's some sort of a manufactured structure of some kind. Yes.
My brother says it looks like a radome for radar. And yeah, that could be. It almost looks like the HARP radar that they haul around in the ocean that is round. Just like that. It could very well be, Jonathan. Very good observation. Thank you. Okay, next image. Okay, a lot of things have been noticed on the center of craters. What this is unknown. It could be a cluster of housing units. It could just be rocks. But it would seem that it would be odd to be right in the center of an impact crater. Because in an impact crater, like the ones to the left of it, like right here, there's nothing in the center.
Everything's blown out of it.
Right. And same with this one. But what I'm going to say is these here look like individual housing units, maybe domes, 3 of them. And I don't know what this is here, maybe another dome. I don't know. But your guess is as good as mine. Thomas, HARP is an antenna array, but it does have a mobile unit that is a dome. And it's parked outside of Hawaii. Here's something here that I wanted to point out because the edges of it look scalloped, like some type of cog or mechanical wheel or device. And over here on the right, it looks like a dome. Over here, it looks like a dome.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what this is, but it's scalloped around the edge. And that doesn't look natural either. This is supposed to be the alleged face on the moon. Supposed to represent an alien gray. I think it's probably, what is that disorder called? Pareidolia, where we look at things and see faces.
Mm-hmm.
But this is what an astronomer said. It looked like an alien gray.
I don't know. That looks almost more natural phenomenon to me.
That does to me too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, these things here now
Oh.
look to me like structures, pieces of buildings that are ruins. It actually looks like ruins. This here almost looks like a truck on its side.
Mm-hmm.
This one here. And this one here just looks like a big stone slab. Yes, OCCAM, you are correct. Sometimes there is remainder of impact debris in the centers according to what elements and makeup of what hit. That's right. But not usually. Usually when it hits that hard, and it hits something hard like maybe a metallic structure underneath, it's going to be decimated into dust. And that's why you have so much dust on the lunar surface, in my opinion. Okay, here we go. Next picture. It's coming. This is a tower that everybody should be familiar with. Thought to be over 5 miles tall.
Wow.
Very thin, like Carl Wolf stated in his video clip. Unknown as to what it's being used for. It has been theorized that it's being used for communications, interstellar communication, like a big antenna. But that's our human determination of what it is. What it really is, I have no clue. Anybody in the chat have an idea? John Bruno says it's an awesome construct. Yes, I agree with you, John, very much so. It's one of the most clear images we have of something on the moon. Jonathan says a pod on the end. Yes, there is a pod on the end. Mm-hmm. What it's being used for, I don't know. John says, what about a solar collector? Maybe. But being that the moon itself reflects sunlight, maybe the entire moon itself is a solar collector. Just a thought. Okay, moving on. Yeah, okay. All right, he was talking about the building that looked like a parabolic dish. This is it. He said it's actually a building, or it could be a parabolic dish. In my opinion, it looks like a parabolic dish, and it looks like it has structure underneath holding it up.
Yep. That's a famous one.
That's a famous image, yes. Yep. Glenn says, yes, looks like to send or receive signals. Yes. Bobby Flindy says it looks like a Tesla coil. Oh, in regards to the tall one before, my brother said antenna arrays inside of the pod. So it probably was an antenna of sorts, that last one. Okay. Here's the next one. There is a, no, that's not the one I wanted. Okay. That looks like there's something in there, like maybe a building.
Mm-hmm.
It's the wrong title. Okay. This is wrong too. What I was trying to show was right here in the crater. There's something odd. There's like a row of ridges right here,
Mm-hmm.
and something raised. I don't know what that is. This is not a dome cluster. I don't know why I put that there. Okay. Working late at night, you know. Yeah, well, anyways, here we go. Oh, I got to point out one other thing. If you look right in here, there looks like tracks. Do you see those tracks?
I think I'm seeing several cylinders that are raised up.
There might be cylinders, but right here there are tracks. Do you see the tracks?
Yep.
And this looks like a fence around the outside, on the inside of this crater. There looks like there's a fence there with like a walkthrough area. Do you see that?
Hey, Occam, I'm sure that those orbiters, whatever we're seeing from those orbiters, is heavily redacted and censored for sure.
Okay, here we go. Looks like a building, a large building, complex in the middle of the crater. Okay, we're coming up to the next image. Come on. It's just amazing what they have found on the surface. Okay, here it shows a structure that collapsed. This dark area here is where the actual building collapsed. There's part of the building over here on the left, and there's some up here above the black and over here. But this is where it collapsed and opened up an opening into the moon. Kind of interesting.
You know, speaking of the nuke theory on why we use that nuke on the surface of the moon, there could be another reason. It could be that these are ruins, and we just didn't want these things to fall in the hands of another country, something like that.
Could be something like that. Yeah.
Could be that.
Yep. I have another theory in a minute. Here's what everyone thinks might be a lunar pyramid. It does show at least 3 sides, and there's a shadow on the 4th. Yeah, Occam says all of a sudden China wants to orbit space station near the moon. Well, you know why? They want to build a base on the moon. Several bases, in fact. They want to control it. They want to control the mining assets of the moon itself. Because if they control the moon, they control space near Earth, pretty much. I think we're already there, to be honest with you. I think we have a base there.
There are definitely theories of that for sure.
Okay, this here I wanted to show because there looks like there's a grouping of maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different raised objects. I don't know what they are, okay? But around it, it looks like there's tracks, like somebody took a four-wheeler and drove through the moon dust.
Yep.
See, it's all over. You can see where people have either driven or walked or moved, or maybe that's water flow. I don't know. But this is inside of a large crater, and it's protected by the crater walls. So this is interesting. What do you think, Tommy?
If I'm not mistaken, there's another photo somewhere that I've seen where there's a device looked like a giant tractor or something like that. They had a photo of it one day, and it had tracks behind it, like it had been driven and stopped. Then they took additional photos of it sometime later, and it had moved on, and the tracks were a lot longer. You know, again, there's just so many anomalous things going on in the moon that it's really hard almost to ignore them, if you ask me. I mean, this is happening again. Those channels that Tim was speaking of with those powerful telescopes, definitely worth watching. You'll see some stuff that'll just blow your mind.
This is a picture of the lunar base, the alien base, filmed in 1965 from the Lunar Orbiter. The base would be to the left in this little red square. Okay, but the blown up version is on the right. This is the picture that Carl Wolf was talking about in his video clip in regards to the alien base that they found on the backside of the moon. I think it's groundbreaking that we know that. Okay, I want you to look at this picture, Tommy. What do you see?
Oh, I sure see something rising up out of that crater.
What does it look like to you? You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of a medieval tower. Like something you would see made out of stone for like a tower on a castle.
Like a bishop in chess. I know what you mean. Like that top.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, yeah, I get you.
That's
you're right.
What it reminds me of. And, and I didn't know if anybody else saw it. Oh, I see one person.
Not a bishop.
Thomas Fessler.
Rook.
Right, Thomas. Castle. Exactly. That's what it looks like. It looks like a piece of the castle. Castle battlement. Yep, that's it. Exactly. And a nice building to the left as well. Over here.
Something straight.
Yep. Wait, I got more coming. More images that are just mind-boggling. Here we go. All righty. Okay, this is an odd opening that was found in the moon. It looks like an opening with like maybe needles or spires around the outside, or some type of posts.
Or a lock.
Or a lock. That could be a lock, yes.
Nope.
It almost looks like a mouth as well. Something that might be in there, you know, like God forsake us, it might be a lunar worm or something. But there is something there, and it's super large. Yeah, look at those towers, yes. Very much so. They also say, or a ramp to give lift, maybe. That could very well be. Very, very well the case. It is fascinating. Okay, moving on. Let's see here. I gotta find my. Here we go. This is funny. It's a giant worm waiting for the Millennium Falcon. That's funny.
They're everywhere.
Yep. Now, this is thought to be an alien ship on the surface. One of many. But since I don't know, I put a question mark just because it's not verified. Here we go. This is a triangle. The image on the left is the original image. The one on the right is just showing you that it has equilateral triangular points. So is this naturally occurring in nature? I would say no. This is some type of mark. What do you think, Tommy?
That's hard to say. I don't know, man. There's just really not enough there for me to make a determination on that one.
Well, it's triangular, though, so it's kind of hard to decipher that. It's just weird, even though it has rounded edges.
Have to put it on the definite maybe pile.
Okay, definite maybe pile. We'll leave it there. Okay. Next image. All right, I need you to see this. I'm going to reference some images from Mars. Mars show tube structures that look like they're transportation tunnels. This line on the left going across the moon's surface and underneath it all the way up to the top of this image looks like it could be a transportation tunnel. And right next to it is a raised fabricated stone dome. That is not a crater. Do you see that? Mm-hmm. Okay. So right alongside the dome goes the road or the transportation tunnel. And people can, or beings can move inside this tunnel. That is the theory going around, that this is actually a tunnel or a tube. Now, another theory is it could be a power line of sorts. But it would have to be huge if that's a power line, because it can be seen from space. So whether it's a power line or an actual tunnel system is unknown, but this, in my opinion, is definitely unusual. Mm-hmm. What do you think, Tommy?
That is just really something. I mean, it could be a lava tube, but if it were like a lava tube or something, I would think it would be a bit more smooth, I guess, maybe as far as the contour. I don't know, man. That is really strange. That is really something.
Says, be careful with this stuff. YouTube forced secure team to be canceled and destroyed Tyler's life because people were sending him videos of UFOs and UAP. Just saying. There were other reasons why Secure Team 10 went offline. But anyways, this is a tunnel system, I think. I'm not sure, but we'll go with that. Okay, here we go. Ready?
Josh, I agree with you absolutely.
Okay, here's a famous photo of the monolith. The movie 2001 Space Odyssey actually modeled its monolith off this NASA image. So it's based on the fact that this image actually really exists. So it's really on the moon. Now, this is supposedly rectangular in shape and about a half-mile tall.
Imagine that. It's only being a half a mile tall.
Yeah. That's even taller. Wouldn't that be taller than the Sears Tower?
Yeah, we don't have anything a half mile tall, I think.
No. All righty. So that's the monolith that 2001 Space Odyssey was based on. And there's supposed to be another monolith on Phobos.
Yeah, Phobos.
Here's a bigger picture of the bases or base that was found on the backside of the moon. You can see the full base now. You can see the large circle back here, which has what looks like two Quonset huts in the center. Then there's a circle here with something in the middle, but this is the actual base.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're coming up here. Okay, I don't know if you can see this or not, but just to the left of the letter R, there is a reflective dome that is inside a crater. It's reflecting sunlight.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see that?
Yep.
Okay. I got a better picture of it coming up.
It is reflective, isn't it?
Yes, I got a better picture coming up. Okay, man. Okay, this is from a different angle. You can see it reflecting sunlight in the middle of the crater. You see there isn't any in the crater above it, but there is one here. Now, according to Carl Wolf, this crater was said to be, or these reflective domes were said to be over a mile long or a mile wide in diameter. So imagine, it could be a city.
Sound surgeon. Yeah, actually, there are some videos out there. We don't have any, I don't think, on our channel, but there's some channels out there that've got some pretty big telescopes out there pointed at the moon, and you'll see all kinds of things moving around, flying by, and it's wild.
Oh, we'll get into that on another live. I'll guarantee it. Here's a reflective dome in a crater. It's a up close look, and it shows you where the reflections are coming from. Reflection on like a glass surface, reflection onto the surface of the outside edge of the crater. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
And it has weird Venus structure on the top, like it's all knitted together. And over here, instead of a crater, it looks like there's a dome right there. I think that's a really cool picture.
Mm-hmm.
Best close-up of a dome on the moon that I've ever seen.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, we're coming along here. All right, here's a famous one. 1967, Lunar Orbiter 3, the Tower or the Shard, filmed in 1967. This one was thought to be over 1 mile high in height. Now, whether this was natural and it slammed into the moon and stuck there, which I could actually see happening, or it was built.
We've seen oblong meteors before, that Tum-2 or whatever that thing that just cruised through our solar system recently. That was
one. Yeah, I don't remember the name of it either.
Tum or something.
Yeah, started with an O. Yeah, it could have been something like that sticking into the lunar surface, or it could have been built. and the X that's above it is actually the photographic mark to measure it when it was back on Earth, the image.
Thank you, John. Thanks, John. John got us the correct translation of that object. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
sir.
Umamu or Umama. Yeah, that one. Okay, these areas have been highlighted in yellow. They look like buildings, cities. And I think it even extends back here, back behind where it's highlighted, back behind the shadow. And even back over here, behind here, but these are raised. So I thought, city? Maybe. And there's like in front here, on the right image, in the left corner, there looks to be a raised building of sorts, or maybe even a craft. Do you see that, Tommy?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yeah, they should have highlighted that too. They missed out on that one, didn't they?
They missed a lot in that photo, yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay, here's that housing cluster again. Must have just repeated it twice. Okay.
Thank you, Renee.
Here we go. Hey, John, thanks for becoming a new member. I appreciate it. Here are some images on the moon that I couldn't identify for the life of me, but the one on the left, in the left corner, looks a lot like that really tall 5-mile-high tower, kind of. If you look at it, you see the white base and the long stem and the pod on the top, but it looks like it's open. And then the top picture, I have no clue what that is. But the one to the right in the oval looks a lot like it could be a ship of some kind. I don't know.
Thank you, Michael. We appreciate that, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Appreciate it. Okay, going on to the next one. We're getting there. We're getting there. Okay, this is a famous image.
Yep, big
This
time.
one here of the lights, the 3 lights here and the 4 lights here. A lot of people say it's a ship, but I got some 3D images of it, and it looks like it's raised up. And so it might be possibly a building with lights on top, or it could be a ship of some kind. It could be a ship, but I don't know, because if you look at it here and then you look at the center picture here, it looks like it's moved. And then over here, part of it is missing up here, like it moved over. So it could be a vehicle of some sort. It could be. I just don't know. What do you think, Tommy?
Yeah, this is definitely a famous shot. When you're talking about moon anomalies, this is one that's always going to come up. And I think to Tim's point, he's right. It looks like this thing is moving around in there, or there's something about that photo, something about that object that is changing. Maybe it's just the lights themselves, don't know, but there's definitely some kind of that's just a real tough anomaly to explain, I think.
My brother says that he thought it might be landing pads.
Could very
that
well
could
be.
very well be.
Very well
Maybe
be.
they're moving them around so that they can
or
move them where they need them.
Or like we do here, we have different lights for different runways. Maybe those are just different landing zones, something like that.
Or it could also be directional arrows,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
where they're pointing the lights, showing where you should go to land.
Mm-hmm.
Just an idea.
Thank you, Glenn.
Yes, thank you, Glenn. Glad to have you here too, by the way. What I was going to say is there is a theory going around that some of these bases and some of these structures on the moon actually have been rebuilt by the Germans prior to NASA launching in the 60s. Now, that's a theory. Don't know. Have you heard that, Tommy?
You've heard about all kinds of Nazi stuff on the moon surface. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I've ever really kind of bought into that, but myself. But
Right, I don't know for sure, but there is that theory, so I had to bring it up.
sure.
Okay, these are supposedly buildings. If you look to the left, right here, it looks like the letter S, and then like some type of raised tower. And then here you've got like a wall and a building, like a house. Do you see that?
Yep.
Okay, this is on the lunar surface. Going to the next one. Okay, this was unusual to me because it was a V-shaped shard. Now, is it a shard? Is it an antenna? I don't know what that is. What do you think, guys? What do you think in the chat? What do you think, Tommy?
Hard to say. That is very interesting. It's definitely out of place. No question about that. I don't know. Maybe, I mean, that could be a photo mark. It could be something on the surface. That's really hard. It could just be a gouge from something. Hard to say.
Yeah.
There's not a lot there, you know.
I was thinking maybe it might be a lunar chicken. No, I'm just kidding. Anyways, moving on. I have no idea what that is. There's that famous picture again.
Yep.
And I say it's unknown because we don't know what it is. Most people say it's a ship. But like my brother said, it could have been, Jonathan Duss said, it could have been a landing pad. So there are many theories that are going around about this object. None have been verified as of this date. Okay, I think I have one more picture. And when you see it, they are two raised fabricated stone domes. And you can see where they carved out around the domes to create kind of either a crater effect or a wall. And there's like a road or a tunnel that connect between the two. If you look at this, there's like a tunnel or a seam that goes up from the bottom here through the A and all the way up top. Do you see that?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and it's very unusual to find two craters that are connected together like that. Okay, these aren't craters, these are domes, and you can tell they're domes because the sides are polished. Do you see that?
Yep.
They're polished so they reflect light. These are lunar domes, and you can see on the sides where it looks like it's been chiseled away. You see the marks?
Mm-hmm.
It's been chiseled away. It's been cut away so that these are here in the ground. These are two lunar domes. Very interesting picture. The only time I've seen it was recently, and I thought I'd bring it up. So that is my lunar structure clip of the evening. I hope everyone enjoyed that. We learned that there are indeed unknown structures on the moon. Well, unknown and known. Mm-hmm. They're known now. Yep. And there are more structures than what I showed you. There's the Tower of Babel, mm-hmm. or Babel, which is like a needle tower extending away from the moon that's supposed to be like 15 miles high. That was photographed in 1967 by one of the orbiters. It's just amazing what they have come up with. Mm-hmm. I'd have to say that we have yet to discover as a public the extensive imagery that is being withheld from us.
Right.
But I think that with amateur astronomy and professional astronomy, we are going to find out a lot more than what they want us to know.
Right.
And I hope tonight we have shed some light on the subject of lunar structures and the fact that we do have, or we did have, an alien base on the back of the moon at one time. Now, whether it was destroyed by that nuclear blast or not, I do not know, because like I said, does Earth technology have an effect on alien technology? We don't know that. And of course, NASA, never a straight answer, is going to come out and tell us. So in that regard, do you have any last comments, Tommy?
Just that there's just so much overwhelming evidence that there's freaky things going on in the moon. Is it aliens? Is it us? Is it the Chinese? I mean, I don't know who it is or why they're doing what they're doing, but I do have I'm convinced that it's happening. I mean, I really am. I'm a logical human being, and I'm convinced, based on all the information available, that there's something very unique, let's say, going on the moon. You know, and you, like Tim was saying, you watch some of these channels, these big telescopes, and you'll see it. I mean, you'll see things flying by and controlled things flying by and making angles and stuff like that. You know, rocks in space don't do that. They travel in one direction. That's it.
Right. And you
so
see giant shadows going across the moon's surface too.
That's
I
right.
mean, maybe an asteroid once in a while will fly by that's big enough to cast a shadow on the lunar surface, but in some cases there's something just above the lunar surface casting that lunar shadow. So we don't know what's up there.
I did have one other thing for everybody that came out to my channel when Tim and I did the debates. We really appreciate that. We had a hoot of a good time doing it. Just remember that we are going to be doing the election over there as well. We're going to cover several hours of the election, probably 4 or 5 hours. Who knows? Should have a good time with that. If you'd be so kind, I would really appreciate it if you could go over to my channel and visit Tommy Highway TV and hit that subscribe button. It really helps out my channel a lot, and I appreciate that.
Also, we want to announce that we are going to be doing a Halloween special on Halloween itself at 8 o'clock p.m. Central Daylight Time, 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. And we are going to step out of our box. We are not necessarily going to be doing anything UFO related. We're going to be doing something Halloween related. We're going to have possibly a tarot card reader. We're going to have a medium and a psychic. And we might do a live EVP session. So come visit us on Halloween.
Absolutely. And Candy, I'm going to go ahead and give Tim your email address, and he can contact you, and you guys can talk, because I got to go to work.
Okay. Well, nice seeing everyone. We're going to roll credits.
Thank you.